Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss how there's no shortage of discussion in the media and political circles about the action which needs to be taken against the rioters, as well as the social media platforms, although that'll be later, who encouraged and enabled them. There's really not a lot being said about either those in the media or politicians about the role of individuals who used and encouragement for this violence from a safe distance, using their platforms in politics or the media themselves, or in the case of a certain foghorn of ignorance, both. Because I think the first point I want to make is, so I've listened to a few podcasts on the situation with well-meaning commentators, all providing what I think are their genuine views. And there's one message that never seems to come out. Sometimes it sort of skirts on it, never seems to come out. There's a lot of talk about how the riots used as their trigger or excuse, however you want to characterise it, the murder of young girls about a week ago. There was a huge disinformation drive on social media to persuade people that the person responsible was a Muslim asylum seeker. They weren't. The person who's been charged, Christian. Not a good one, I have to say, as a Christian myself. More someone identifying as Christian from possibly a genuine Christian family. But nonetheless, where they have a religious identity, it's a Christian one. And the person charged with the murders is British, born and bred in Britain, born in Wales, living in Lancashire. And there's a lot of talk about how these riots were essentially kicked off with the lies told about the identity of the person believed to be responsible for the murders. But this isn't true. The characteristics of the alleged murderer are irrelevant. It's almost like saying if this were a Muslim asylum seeker, oh, the riots would therefore be fine. No, they wouldn't. Like, what if they had been Muslim? Does that justify attacking innocent Muslims up and down the country? No. When they found out he was actually from a Christian background, did they switch to, oh, we should attack churches instead? No, although a church was attacked. There was actually talk of gravestones being broken up to used as missiles. So, but that they weren't intending to attack the church. They just used it as easy ammo. And that is because these people, they didn't attack mosques because they thought the murderer was Muslim. They attacked mosques because they're Islamophobic and they thought they had an excuse. I mean, what if the alleged murderer had been an asylum seeker? Does that justify attacks on innocent asylum seekers all over the country? Again, no. Identifying a characteristic of someone who commits or is believed to have committed a serious crime and then using that as an excuse to tar everyone else sharing that characteristic with the same brush, that's bigotry. It's an excuse for hate. It's not a basis for protecting communities. So the fact that some notable people use social media to push lies about the identity of the alleged murderer is only relevant insofar as it's evidence that the people who pushed that disinformation, because it was lies, wanted to incite violence and against certain groups, most notably the Muslim community and areas which housed asylum seekers. And yet nobody seems to have any confidence that these people will be held to account. You know, from informed observers to actual legal experts, I've seen nobody anticipating the police knocking on the doors of the individuals who incited this violence, even though we're told there are laws against it. And it would be naive to suppose the reason these people will be safe is because they're being protected somehow. It's like, it's not in the interests of the police. It's not in the interests of the government we have in place now to protect these people. The only counter I could think of is, would there be a fear that arresting people like Farage, Tice, Oakeshott, Melville, Goodwin, and others who spread this disinformation, would that trigger a sort of political backdraft? But I've not heard anyone expressing those thoughts. And actually, you'd have to suggest that if that's the reason, there'd have to be a conspiracy in government and the police to not go after these people. I don't think backing off the instigators for fear of the reaction would be a good move anyway, and something would come out. If there was like a widespread conspiracy to do it for that reason, something would be leaked. So in reality, I can't see why those who incited the violence online would be protected. It seems more likely to me that either the law or the guidelines for applying the law as they currently exist aren't strong enough. Those arrested for the actual rioting will absolutely have the book thrown at them. I mean, I remember, the 2011 riots, where, by the way, Nigel Farage said, oh, we should send the army in for that. He's not saying that this time. There was again a strong element of opportunistic looting and coordination about them, although the initial flare-up was a breakdown between community and policing, so a more usual source of riot. Not like the completely fabricated and pre-planned attacks of the last few days. And there were people who faced what Starmer called the full force of the law for relatively minor crimes. Like, it was a proper crackdown. You had situations where, someone else might have broken the window into the shop and then someone else just nicked something that was lying there anyway. They still ended up with a conviction. In a lot of cases, of course, the convictions were absolutely deserved. But in some cases, like, it seems a bit harsh, going to prison for nicking ice cream, doesn't it? And Keir Starmer was the director of public prosecutions at the time. So there's no doubt he means it when he says these far-right thugs are going to be in for a bad time of it. But what about those who supplied the fuel for this fire? Richard Tice of Reform UK has defended the rhetoric of his party as free speech. But in UK law, freedom of speech comes with responsibility. What about people's freedom to live their life without fear of attack? That's more important. You can exercise your free speech behind closed doors, in private, with your other bigoted mates over a drink, if you like, without doing any harm to anyone. But if your speech in public causes others harm or threatens harm, you don't have that freedom. And that's not a personal moral argument of mine. That's UK law. It's just that it's a law that at the moment we can't see being enforced. And as I often have to say, a law which isn't enforced is no law at all. But the inconsistency frustrates me. I remember back, I've had to check it out when it was 2012. A man was upset at my local airport, Robin Hood Airport. It's actually, I say local, it's closed now. But never mind. At the time, Robin Hood Airport, a guy from my hometown of Doncaster was annoyed at them. Oh, he's proper miffed. And he tweeted that if they didn't sort themselves out, he was going to blow the airport up. Now, he wasn't going to blow the airport up. He was just blowing off steam because he was pissed off. There was no threat. You would not look at that tweet and go, oh, that person is actually going to try and blow the airport up. No, he wasn't. He was saying something on Twitter. A silly thing to say. Yeah, you can argue a silly thing to say. Airports are often the targets of terrorism. It's going to be a bit sensitive talking about blowing up an airport. But the point is, he wrote a tweet. No one would have taken it seriously, but he was still prosecuted. He was still convicted. Lost his job as a result as well. Well, if you can be convicted of threatening speech in a way that I would argue the average person would have looked at it and gone, it's not actually serious, is he? Why haven't the police even taken some of the social media riot instigators in for questioning? Have changes to the law since 2012 during the Tory government made it harder to do that? What's going on? And speaking of inconsistency, as I say, Nigel Farage, he's changed his tune. He's changed his approach to rioting. 2011, those riots, he was talking about sending he said they should face rough justice. The army should be sent in to sort them out. 2024, his response, where there's a response at all, he's been a bit quiet lately. But where he said anything at all, it's that, the government should pay heed to their concerns. Being clear, the rioters don't have concerns. They can't say they're mad at the murders because their first target was to attack the community grieving as a result of those murders. They can't say they're mad at immigration, even because their further targets were against British institutions. Mosques, a Citizens Advice Bureau, a library was torched yesterday. A phone shop was raided. What was that about? Oh, they must have heard the alleged murderer had a mobile phone, so now we're going to loot phones as a weird protest against it. I guess they looted the shoe shop because the murderer was wearing shoes or something. And why did a group of thugs attack a lone police officer on a motorbike? Had Farage told them the murderer rode a bike once or something? None of the actions of these people had any link whatsoever to their feigned grievances. And people are now wondering if the crackdown will work to cause these attacks to fizzle out quickly, or if we're looking at a summer of riots. As far as I can see, the government and police are aiming to shut down these riots quickly with swift and brutal retribution against those directly taking part. They're hoping to send a message to people to get them to think twice. Like, if you go out to cause trouble on this scale, you can find your life turned upside down just by being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, the place you've chosen to be. What we're going to see, we're not going to see a proportionate justice response here. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to have any sympathy for anyone who went out to even be with them, even if they didn't go out to cause violence themselves, if they just went around there to sort of add to the numbers and look from the back, but not actually lob any bricks themselves, or opportunistically looting shops, something like that. I'm not going to have any sympathy for them. They've gone out to add their numbers to far-right thugs. But I have talked about how harsh it was that some idiots got caught up in the 2011 riots and ended up with fairly severe punishments. Well, the government won't mind that message getting out again. First of all, the public will approve, but it's also a way of saying that to these people, even if you just turn up out of curiosity, if you find yourself on the wrong side of things, you can end up with a conviction. You could lose your job or your business. And I can appreciate the strategy there. If you wanted to shut this down quickly, if you think that the way to shut it down more long-term requires a more long-term strategy in the here and now, if you want this thing to not drag on for weeks, this is a way to shut it down quickly. I would expect as the convictions start to come through, which is going to be quick, we're talking about 24-hour courts here, I would expect the government to pick out examples of people who were living nice lives, nice comfortable lives, and now everything's changed for them. It's a way of getting people to think twice before taking part in another one. Like, don't be surprised to see Yvette Cooper or Keir Starmer really laying it on thick. A proper, think about it. Is it worth going to prison? Think about your kids. And strategically, maybe that can work. But in terms of addressing the long-term problem and in the interests of justice rather than strategy, everyone who deliberately engineered these riots needs to face consequences. There are some people who were pushing these messages online who are more guilty than some of the people who are going to find themselves in prison by the end of this month. And it's all right, Starmer saying there are already laws in place regarding incitement online. But if at the end of this process, if at the end of this month, I'm looking back, and if the only people convicted of anything related to these riots are the actual rioters and looters, it'll be clear to me that those laws mean nothing. Because it's obvious people broke the law online. Nobody denies it, least of all the government. If not a single one of them therefore faces justice, it's clear that those laws are not being enforced, isn't it? If so, we need to look at why they're not being enforced and fix that, or the long-term problem continues to be a long-term problem. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.